Hi there, and welcome back to another edition of ScaleUp Radio, the podcast inspired by the Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System and designed to make navigating our scale-up journeys that little bit easier by learning from others' experiences. I'm Kevin Brent, and this week on the show, I'm delighted to be joined by Matt Nicol. And Matt is the driving force behind Nicol Co estate agents. Starting during the 2009 recession, Matt has grown his business from a single office, just him in Droitwich, to a renowned agency with 3 locations and 38 staff members. And we dive into how his commitment to the community and a unique team structure have set Nicol Co apart, earning them the title of Best Estate Agent in the UK 2024. And Matt also shares his forward-thinking approach to business metrics and his visionary plans for transitioning to an employee ownership trust. So make sure you don't miss any future episodes by subscribing to ScaleUp Radio, wherever you like to listen to your podcast. You can also nominate a guest. If you like Matt and you know somebody that might be a great guest as well, then you can nominate them for ScaleUp Radio, and you can find out how in the show notes below. For now, get ready and listen on for a dose of inspiration and actionable insights in this compact and enlightening conversation with Matt Nicol. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm delighted today to be joined by Matt Nicol, who is the owner of Nicol Co estate agents. So Matt, great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me on, Kevin.
So tell us about Nicol Co. I mean, I've given the game away a little bit as to what you do, but tell us about it.
So we're an estate agency business based in the Midlands. We've been trading since 2009. I opened the business in October 2009. Some people will remember what the housing market was like in the years prior to 2009. Right. And I'd been cutting my teeth working for another estate agent before setting up on my own. I've been an agent now for 20 years. This will be my 20th year. Owning my own business for 15 of those, but I cut my teeth working for another independent before I felt it was time to go on my own. So, we're based in Droitwich, Worcester and Malvern as well. So 3 areas of Worcestershire.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And can you give us an idea as to the scale of the business? What sort of stage you're on your scale-up journey?
Yeah. So we've been trading, as I said, for 14 years, or this is the 15th. I employ 38 members of staff. Mm-hmm. We're multifaceted. We've got sales, lettings, land and new homes. I've got a marketing business as part of it as well. And in terms of kind of turnover and stuff like that, we're over £2 million a year in terms of turnover. And I'll talk about it today, probably about our blueprint in terms of where we want to be at the end of 2030. We would like to be turning over, obviously, a higher number than what we're doing now, but we've got things that we need to do to get there. And that's part of our plan.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about the marketplace. What sort of trends? What are you seeing in the world of estate agents and the properties and lettings and things?
Last year was tough. 2023 was tough. Reason for that, I think, is because of the Kwarteng and Truss bombshell that came out in September 22. First half of the year last year wasn't great, but the second half was quite strong, and we've seen that now continue into 2024. Positive news, no interest rate rises from the Bank of England for the last kind of 5 or 6 months since August. And I think that's being felt within the market now that the confidence is back there. The battle we always have is ambitious valuations is typically the best way to put it. Obviously, the client wants as much as possible. We completely understand that, but the cost to borrow money is higher now, so the figures aren't necessarily the same as they were in 21, 22. But in general state, the market feels pretty positive. I've worked, as I said, 20 years. I've seen some good times and bad times, and this feels like a more normal market. The trick with that is some of my staff joined in 21 and 22, so they've only seen the boom. They haven't seen the normal market. So I am educating them on the daily basis to make sure that they're on it and able to work.
Fantastic. And so, and how are you affected? I mean, it's such a competitive market in many respects. How do you differentiate yourself? What do you do a little bit differently to have enabled you to get where you are, do you think?
I kind of remember that estate agency has been likened to car sales in the past. And I think where we buck the trend, we are very, very much rooted in our community. And so when I was cutting my teeth as an agent, I was based in Worcester first. When I opened my business set up in Droitwich, which is the hometown that I live in, and just throughout my time in Droitwich, there's been a lot of things that I've done within the community. There's now a fund that we have called the Community Fund where we give back. And I think reputationally, our business is seen in a strong place, not just because we sell the most or we have, the snazziest signs or the best offices, but more about what we actually do and give back. I set up an event last year called the Big Worcestershire Garage Sale. So that was its inaugural event where we did all the marketing for homeowners or tenants who wanted to sell their bits, didn't want to go to a car boot sale to do it. So we got quite a bit of interest, got it into the papers, put boards up in the gardens, and we had these streets that were filled with people selling their stuff. And that's what people kind of get with Nicol Co. It's not just an estate agency that rocks up, puts a board out the front, sticks it on Rightmove and sells it. We do a little bit more than that.
Love it. And tell me about the community fund. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, so it came about in 2021 when we were all kind of in the pandemic. And my first thing was we weren't obviously getting instructed on many properties because we weren't able to go out and do valuations. Yeah. I had most of my staff working. They were all working at home. We had the technology to do so. So I had about 30 members of staff working from home. And it was all just about having conversations with people. But at that point, I was trying to get commitment from clients to say when we were able to go back to doing what we'd like to do best, which is obviously viewings and showing people around properties, that if anyone sold their property with us, we'd give £100 to the Worcestershire NHS Acute Hospital in Worcester as a donation back for what they'd been doing. But it started there. And then the following year, having spoken to another estate agent in another part of the country, he told me about a community fund, well, a similar idea to the community fund that we now call it. But he picked, I think, 4 schools or 3 schools that he was supporting. And I thought, rather than me dictating to someone which of my 3 I wanted it to go to, we changed it so the vendor, upon completion, chooses which community group, school, or charity they want us to donate to. So we've now probably donated over £60,000. It started obviously regularly. There was lots of money going out. And we always do this thing where we have a photo with the staff member holding the check up, thanking the vendor for who they've donated to, tagging them in the social media post. And there's St Richard's Hospice, Acorns, and a lot of really good charities local to us that have really benefited. Some tens of thousands of pounds they've received now from our community fund.
Yeah, what a lovely idea. Really, really like that. Really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Good. So you and in terms of your business model, so that's all part of your business model, but in terms of the way you charge, is there anything that you do different from perhaps the average?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we call it bells and whistles as standard. Like we throw a lot at it in terms of marketing. So we've got our own marketing manager, we've got a videographer, we've got a VA in Manila who does all of our posting for us. We've got a professional photographer. So when we take a property to market, and we're not just selling high-end prime properties, we are selling what I'd kind of say your bread and butter. So anything really between 200,000 to 750,000, we sell for the mums and dads at the school gate. That is really our market. But our fee is reflective of what we do. I've been providing the stats to my team recently. We achieved last year, on average, 101.4% of asking price. So we're achieving in excess of asking price versus an industry average. Zoopla came out with figures in November saying that the industry average was 93.9% of asking price. So whilst we're probably about 0.5% more than most estate agents, they quote 1, we quote 1.5. What you'll typically find is we're actually putting more money in the vendors' pockets. And that's the point that my staff are really kind of hitting home with. We also sell properties quicker and we hold the person's hand through the journey because we have our own in-house sales progressors. But those things cost money, don't they, at the end of the day? So you can't give the client the service that they will never, ever have experienced before if you do it on a shoestring budget. So we have the right people in the right places. I employ experienced staff. I do have some junior members that are kind of learning from us as well, but the sales progressors have been in the industry for 7 years plus. Marketing managers, very, very talented. It's a great team that do the jobs, basically.
And that might be an interesting topic to explore a little bit, because essentially what I'm reading in there is that you've managed to keep yourself as a bit of a premium offer. You haven't been tempted to kind of just cut everything and chase the prices to the bottom. You've managed to maintain that in a competitive market and establish that differentiation. So you've given a couple of ideas, but if people are in a similar sort of market where there's lots of competition and there's that price pressure all the time, what advice would you give as to how you can maintain that pricing that you want?
I'd be quite focused on what you do best. So we as a business, we choose not to be involved with locally to us retirement apartments. We don't get involved with. In Worcester, we don't sell leasehold apartments in general unless it's new build.
Yeah.
And focusing on what you do best is part of it, because you can get distracted spending a lot of time chasing everything. We also have a 10-mile radius, so there's people that are in kind of periphery villages that would like to use us. They've had recommendations or they've heard about us, but I don't want my staff stretched into the wrong location.
Right.
And I think maybe even from the start, if you're just starting out with your business, be very, very focused on what you're going to be great at, and don't try and go chasing after shinies, because I've done that. I've tried to be something to all men, and it doesn't work. It really doesn't work. And because we say no to some business, we're actually even better for the ones that do choose to use us. And I guess I've kind of got the mentality, and my staff have got the mentality now, that if they don't want to pay the fee for what we're going to deliver, they weren't our client anyway. And it's something that you have to kind of get your head around, but it's a great way to approach it.
Great. Yeah, I love it. And the more that you're confident about your own niche and your own capabilities and the fact that you are good at it, the more you can have those proper conversations with the client. And as you say, make sure that you work with the right clients and are reasonably happy if somebody says, actually, you know what, maybe we're not the best fit.
Exactly. And having the evidence and having the statistics to back it up, because anyone will go, yeah, but you're going to say that. You're going to say that you're a great agent. Yeah. We actually won last year, although it's dated for this year, best estate agents in the UK 2024. So that's out of 13,080 estate agency businesses in the UK. And we were picked the best sales agency. We're also the best small sales and lettings agency, which is in the 2 to 5 office category. So yeah, it's not just arrogance or confidence. It's kind of what we do. We might not be the specialist in one thing alone. We're very, very consistent across a lot of different metrics and measures. And probably because we're not spending time working for absolutely everyone, some people who won't pay us the right fee, some people who will need phone calls every evening and all those bits and pieces, we're able to deliver a good service to those people that want to work with us. So, and it is tricky, because I know I could give in to the flattery of having more boards around in my hometown, and I could say to the staff, yeah, go out and quote 1% fees, but it's a race to the bottom, and it's not something we need to get involved with. We're quite focused on delivering a better service for the fee that we deserve.
Yeah, very good. Excellent. So you mentioned that you started back in 2009. Yeah, take us back to then, and what made you set up, and let's tease out some of the milestones along the way. And that's assuming that my cat, which you can probably hear in the background mewing, doesn't continue to distract me too much. No,
that's fine. I didn't hear your cat. My daughter's also making noises in the kitchen, so don't worry. We're in similar. They say don't work with children and animals. So yeah, 2009, I'd been working for another estate agent. I joined them as a junior back in 2004, and it was really a great grounding for me. The reason I got into estate agency originally is because back in the day when Sarah Beanie was doing all of her property development shows, I thought I wanted to be a property developer. My dad, I was working for him at the time. He had a golf driving range in Birmingham, and he turned to me and said, "You're not the most practical, Matt, so why don't you go into the industry and learn it?" And that's how it began. So I worked as a junior negotiator for a company in Worcester, and I just took it on like I was the pot washer wanting to be the head chef eventually. And I was doing everything for everyone. And I think my directors then at the time saw something in me. I actually spoke to them prior to the first period of recession in 2007. I actually spoke to them about wanting to go and do it on my own then. And they said, "Matt, you'd be bonkers. The market's about to tank. Why don't you stay with us? The branch manager role is about to become available in the office you're working in. The current manager wants to move to another location. So stay with us. You've got an income, then you'll be set up." And it was the best decision. And I still thank them for it. They kept me there. And it meant that I could work through what was obviously going to be a very tough market to be an estate agent, even tougher to be a 23, 24-year-old branch manager at the same time, because we had to make a redundancy. We had to work very hard with a lot of stock on the books and trying to keep vendors happy. A lot of people were very desperate at that point. But it was a good grounding for me to kind of really know that I could do it. Out of the 6 offices that they owned, we were the only one that finished in profit in 2008. And so I kind of came into 2009 thinking it's turning back on, the market's coming back. And so I'd sat with my dad and my parents or my mum as well, and said, I think now is the time to start considering it. And I have Facebook posts coming back now, like memories coming up in January 2009. I was still very much pro the agent I was working for, but it probably was starting to make me think about, I was hitting targets for them and announcing it on social media. But it was probably around June time. I sat down with my directors of that company and I said, emotionally, I got quite emotional about it. I said, I think now is the time for me to go on to that next step. And they were very, very grateful. They said, we've had our pound of flesh. And they didn't hold me to a long notice period, didn't put me on garden leave. They said, you probably want to get cracking on it. And I didn't compete with them initially. I went into my hometown, which they didn't feature there anyway. And I'd say the rest is history, but set up on my own, one-man band, sold my flat, moved back in with my parents, cut all my overheads. My missus, she moved back in with her parents, so she cut her overheads as well. Okay. And it was very, very, to the knuckle, put a sign on the doors when I went out to do appointments because I couldn't afford staff at the time. Yeah. And I did choose to have a location. Some estate agents now, they say they can work from their bedroom or whatever, but I've always felt traditional estate agency works best, where a client can come in to see you, sit with you, discuss their needs. And that visibility was quite important to me. I started off with a very small shop and I've grown out of it since we've moved locations, but the Droitwich office was perfect for me. So I've got a son and a daughter. We then found out we were expecting Charlie, my first. So he's 13 now. So for pretty much from when I started the business, we realized we had a child on its way. So it meant that we needed to start recruiting. And I was very fortunate. My first recruit my second recruit. My first recruit helped me out on Saturdays, and she was a former member of staff that I'd worked with. My second recruit, but my first full-timer, unbeknown to me, I'd been out to value her property when I was working for my previous company. Okay. And I didn't know at the time, but she was an estate agent and she was a branch manager of an estate agency business. And she said that I'd impressed her so much that she'd actually been keeping an eye on what I was up to. So when I'd opened in Droitwich, she saw that I'd opened and she was just following the journey. So when I advertised looking for another junior, like I'd been 6 years prior, she came forward and she said, I know you can't afford me, but if you look after me in time, then I'll join you on that junior salary and we'll build it. And then, when the time's right and the finances are there, then I expect to kind of get onto the right salary. And it happened. I then opened my Worcester office.
How amazing is that, though? That's, that doesn't happen every day of the week, does it?
No, I mean, it probably was a bit of a springboard for the fast progress. And when I opened in Droitwich, there were 7 estate agents. It was competitive. It wasn't an easy market to break into. I knew that by virtue of the fact I did things differently and a bit more embracing of technology and marketing techniques and stuff like that, I'd have an edge over the competition. But ultimately, anyone who lived in Droitwich would never have heard of me, other than the kids that had gone to school with me or played rugby with me. But there wasn't really any kind of Nicol Co before me or anything like that. So we worked our way through it. I then decided to open the Worcester office. I felt it was kind of 4 years on. It was time to then venture into Worcester. And I did that, and that was successful. And then we moved offices in Droitwich, went to a larger location, then moved offices in Worcester and went to a larger location. And then during the pandemic, we opened our third office. So when most agents were running for the hills, making redundancies, furloughing all their staff, we were in a situation where I'd been wanting to open an office in Malvern for years and hadn't found the right location, but had found it just before we went into the first lockdown. It was a bakery. It was like I've done with my Droitwich and Worcester office. It was slightly off the beaten track, not on the main thoroughfare where all estate agents are based. It was beautiful position, great views of Malvern Hills, and had things like parking availability for clients, which is always a big thing for me. Parking for staff and parking for clients was one of the big ones. And yes, despite a pandemic, we decided to proceed. And I recruited during the first lockdown. We got someone to join us during the first lockdown. When the lockdown lifted and we were able to get back into an office, she joined and she started prospecting from my Worcester office. So even before we'd physically sat down in Malvern, we were working the location. And it's paid off. We came out of all the lockdowns and the staff were motivated. Other estate agents struggled to get their staff kind of gemmed up to work, really, because they'd been in such a lovely period of relaxation. Yeah. I know obviously there's stresses around. I'm not making jokes of it, but ours were already on it. We were doing gym sessions. We were having 11s. We were doing company quizzes. And so the minute we were able to get going, they were all just chomping at the bit to sit with each other again. So, and 3 offices now. I don't have an ambition right now to open a fourth, but there will be a fourth, I'm sure, at some point. That will probably be as big as I wish to get. I don't feel like I would like to get any larger than that. That's kind of where I feel would be comfortable.
Okay, brilliant. So you've gone from literally one man and a board right through now 38 people, three offices. So you've taken us a little bit through some of those milestones. What were some of the challenges? I imagine running one branch is hard enough, but now you then think, okay, and I've got to get a second one and a third one. Take maybe some of the challenges around how you've managed to keep the Matt Nicol way of doing things across different branches.
Yeah, it's been very important to me. So in terms of the first part, so running the business myself was fine. I was quite happy doing absolutely everything. I'd do my own viewings, I'd write up my own descriptions, I'd type them up and put them on the system and all those bits and pieces. I had no one to kind of manage. I was just looking after it myself. As you start to recruit, I think your processes and systems have to be documented in such a way that people can pick it up. So there was checklists and bits and pieces. Yeah. I was very fortunate that one of my recruitment processes when I opened the Worcester office, when I went back into Worcester, was through a friend that I'd known since I was 14. He'd worked for me at my previous independent estate agent, and he was just at that point where he was wanting to be challenged. He wanted to become a manager. So I said to him, I trained him when he worked for me at the independent. I said, look, you know what you get with me, and I know what I get with you. So I'd like you to open the Worcester office. I'll continue to run Droitwich because this is our breadwinner. This is the one I need to make sure is bringing in the income. Yeah. And then I'll make sure I can give myself time to come over and spend time with you. So I won't be away from you always. I'll be there 1 or 2 days a week, but I can't be in there. I need you to kind of treat it like your own. And that worked superbly well for us, if I'm honest with you. And then I guess the challenge then for me was to start thinking I needed to backfill my position in Droitwich because I couldn't be the guy that did everything anymore. Yeah. And it's still now very important to me that I like to get around all offices at least once a week. I want to be visible. I want to spend time in those offices because it is very important. In terms of how do I keep it having the Matt Nicol way, I think training's a big part of it, but also we had measures in place. So we were quite focused on working out the net promoter score from our clients. Okay. So that was a measure that we were asking our clients after a viewing took place, after evaluation took place, after they'd exchanged, if a tenant moved out. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend Nicol Co to a friend or family member? Yep. And that was just my very, very light touch knowing of whether it's still like I would do it myself. And we won awards for our net promoter score based on the company that was doing it. Against other estate agents, we were the highest scoring. So that gave me some confidence that actually I'd employed well and the staff were really, really on board with my vision and values and we were working in the right direction. Now I think it's really important because of the kind of the plays that I've made and the recruitment that I've done, just to keep the plate spinning more than anything. So you can't put all your eggs in one basket and focus on one team. You have to make sure you're jumping between lettings, land of new homes, the sales, the marketing. But I thoroughly enjoy it. I still get called out for valuations, but I've kind of stepped away from that role. I probably value the prime property. So £1 million plus, I'd go out to see the client if I've got a relationship with them. But otherwise, I really do pass them to the team because the team do the job that I used to do anyway. So that's been a big part of it. And also one of the big things that we did, I've been reading a book called Traction by Gino Wickman back in 2020. And it was just before we went into the first lockdown, or the pandemic had started. And I took then my father, Richard, who's actually in the business. He's our group finance director now. Another member of staff who was the director at the time. I took them away for 2 days to Hampton Manor and I basically worked through the book Traction with them, and we worked out what our EOS was. So Entrepreneur's Operating System. Yeah. And that became our blueprint. I've mentioned it once, but that became our blueprint. And the timing was perfect because we went into a lockdown. A lot of other peers that I had in the estate agency world decided to close the doors and furlough their staff. But I said, let's grind this one out. And at the same time, we perfected our EOS. We'd sat on it for 30 days. We'd given it time. We went back and reviewed it, and it was time to kind of mention it and share it with the staff. So it was a big Zoom presentation. We went through it with the guys, and it was probably well timed for them as well, because whilst there was a lot of uncertainty in the world and we were uncertain about what was happening with our industry, at least they had a North Star. So we had a 10-year goal that we were aiming for. We had a 3-year plan. We had everything mapped out for them. And I think it was just one of those moments where the staff came off that call going, we're with the right people, we're working for the right guy.
Right.
And we still do it now. Like our blueprint is part of our onboarding process. We review it quarterly. We're on top of all of it on a regular basis.
Super. So how has your role, you've hinted at it there, but how is your role different now then, from what it was? What are the main parts of your role now?
So I'm working on freedom of time. I'm trying to do things that I enjoy. I have a role now where I'm chairman of a thing in Droitwich Spa called the Place Board. So I go back to the community involvement. The Place Board's important to me because we're like an advisory panel to the district council. They've got UK SPF money that they need to spend, and we're all about trying to deliver a better town, really, in terms of people coming to spend time here, shop here, shops opening here, businesses opening here, and all those bits and pieces. This week's probably a prime example that I will spend time with staff. I'll have regular meetings with them, monthly one-to-ones. I'll be called upon just to kind of consult with more than anything. I guess I'm a bit more of a troubleshooter now than the kind of the main chair for most of the meetings. But it's really about training the staff to make sure that they're prepared to do the job. Spending time personally on things that I enjoy, which is that Place Board right now. I've been with the town council clerk today. It's those bits and pieces that I kind of find my real enjoyment, and just keeping the wheels turning. I do come forward with probably too many ideas for the staff. They probably prefer me to spend a bit of time out of the business, but we do need to keep our finger on the pulse and ahead of the game. So that's what we seem to be doing.
Good. And how have you structured the teams then? So you've obviously got the 3 offices, but how have you structured the teams?
So one of my directors left the business last year, so he's left to become a mortgage advisor, and actually I think that's been good for him and good for us. He's the guy that helped set the Worcester office up, so I've known him for years and we're still friends. But there are now just 2 directors, which actually I think is a benefit for my managers. So each office has a manager, each department has a manager. And instead of reporting to the director between us, they now directly report into me, which means they actually kind of get swifter answers, the communication's clearer, and I'm always on hand if they're needed. But if I'm honest, it also means that they probably do most of the jobs themselves. They don't really come to me with the questions. So there's a manager in each office. Some of them have assistant managers. Me and my dad, we work really well. Obviously, we've known each other since I was born, so that's a positive. He's been in the company for about 8 years, 9 years, but always been, supporting an advisory board for me. But he's very good at the operational side of things. So opening the Malvern office, whilst we were in the middle of a pandemic, I was focused on managing the staff, keeping them chipper, training and those bits and pieces, whereas he was organising how the window cards are going to look, what the IT is going to supply like, and all those bits and pieces. So we stick in our swim lanes, and I think that's been one of the best things. Yeah. Our teams are set up unlike most estate agency businesses, and I got this through kind of learning and listening to others. But instead of being a negotiator where you do the valuations, you book in the valuations, you get the viewing feedback, you do the viewings, you do the negotiation, we have a sales specialist role. And a sales specialist for us, their primary focus is to sell our properties to their database. They speak regularly to their database. They also book in the market appraisals, but they don't attend viewings. So they're always in the office. They're very system processes. They always stay in the office, and they register their applicants and they contact them about new instructions. We then have sales consultants, and sales consultants with our business are more for the vendors. So they're the more experienced members of staff. They will be doing the viewings on behalf of their sales specialist. They'll be collecting the feedback on behalf of their sales specialist. They'll be negotiating the offers and also doing the vendor contact. So they're very focused on kind of going in and out of the office. Then you have a valuation manager, who obviously in their title is the valuation manager. So they'll go out and do the valuations and the appraisals. And then you have a sales manager who oversees the whole lot, supported by a sales progressor, or 2 senior sales progressors as we have, who will do all the sales progression for us. So it's great for our staff because you have hunters and you have farmers. The hunters are the sales specialists. They want to see their name on the top of the call board. They're just bang, 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 booking viewings, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Whereas the farmers, the consultants, they're more about the client's journey. And for repeat referrals and repeat business for us in this business, you've got to make sure your vendor's happy and your buyer's happy. We've got over 950 Google reviews across the business, which is in our industry really quite unheard of. And I don't spend time reading all of them, but I often get a kind of a sanity check on how our business is doing by looking at them, and the feedback's great. It's about consistency across the brand. Some people have sold with our Malvern office, bought with our Worcester office, but they felt that the same service has been given in both areas. And those are really nice measures to know that, okay, it might cost me a little bit more to have a few extra staff, but actually the result for our clients way better. So why wouldn't I do it that way?
Yeah, good. So you've mentioned some measures now already then. So NPS, you got the Google reviews. And you've talked about the actual achieved price based on the asking price. What other key metrics do you keep an eye on in your dashboard, essentially, to make sure the business is going in the direction you want?
Again, I'm grateful to the EOS model, but back in 2020, we started doing a weekly scorecard.
Okay.
So every single week we have tracked our numbers across things like number of phone calls we made to our vendors, number of applicants on our database, number of market appraisals we've attended, number of valuation, number of instructions we've achieved. We have a gross sales pipeline and a net sales pipeline. So a gross sale for us is we've agreed the deal for our vendor, but they haven't found their next one yet. So we don't count it really as a transaction that's going to be in our pipeline to exchange and complete. So we kind of have an idea of those two figures, age debts and the normal bits and pieces. Our managed book, we've got over 260 managed properties that we look after. How long it takes us on average to go back on call outs and issues. So our how quickly we deal with those kind of work orders. There's a few, but yeah. I've also got in their own departments, I've got them measuring their own weekly scorecard, because for me, a weekly scorecard is if I'm stuck on a desert island, what do I need to know is happening in the business? But for a Worcester sales manager, they need to know specifically, obviously, number of market appraisals they've attended, but how many hours are they spending on the phones? How quick are they answering the phones? They have their own measures that they need to keep an eye on. And I guess that's kind of the way I like to manage my team. I like to kind of share the way that it should be done, but then lead them to do it, as opposed to me going, you need this, you need this, you need this. Yeah. And the autonomy and the results are just, they're fantastic. It's great. So I wouldn't know what their weekly scorecard looks like right now. I know what my marketing team's weekly scorecard looks like, but the sales teams, the lettings team, they run their own, and they manage it internally. But
the point is they have one. So yes. Yeah. And people calling them by different names, scorecards, a cookbook, or all sorts of things. But essentially, they've got a list of measures and behaviors that they keep themselves accountable to.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. And you can kind of spot things going wrong in advance then. And that's the way that it's kind of put across in the book, that I think it was in Brooklyn or something like that. The police chief at the time wanted to kind of almost work out where this crime was coming from. And so by doing this measurement, his own measurement, you could kind of see where things were starting to go wrong. And if you could then tinker and work on those as a focus, you could improve those numbers. And then as a result for them, it reduced the crime. But for me, if we're not going out to enough valuations in a week or over a period of weeks, then what are we doing about prospecting? What are we really doing about our social media push? Are we following up those ones that we've been out to previously enough? It's about kind of not just having the numbers and looking at it and going, brilliant, we've got some numbers there. It's about what can you do with those numbers and how can you improve it?
Brilliant. So you've given us all sorts of really good ways and ideas to think about looking after our people. How about finding the right people in the first place? How do you know when you're interviewing that this person is going to be a good fit with your team?
So our personnel officer is superb. She spent a lot of time with me. She hasn't been with us all that long, but she spent a lot of time with me. And so I think she's kind of got the gist of kind of who I am and what I'm really looking for in people. We use traditional methods in terms of trying to advertise the roles in the first place. We pay a hefty whack to our staff members if they can find someone, because that saves us a fortune on recruitment costs. Yeah. Obviously, there's the other benefits of things like Indeed, but we've got values, clear values: energetic, likable, dedicated, successful, and influential. I'm not expecting every estate agent to come to me and be influential. That's something that we are in our industry and in our community. But likable and energetic, that can come across in a CV. It can come across in the way that they conduct themselves on the phone or when they come into their appointment with us. dedicated, we're probably going to find that one out in the first 3 months because there is probation period for a reason.
Yeah.
And successful. We're not expecting them to have come to us already showing that they are a top estate agent. In fact, some of the best employments we've done have come from the automotive industry and not property related, but you'll get to understand if they are successful, if their performance is there, because we benchmark each month when we do our KPIs. We share the benchmarks, the best score that was across the offices, and you'll see certain members of staff appearing in those quite regularly. So, but the values is probably the most important bit. And don't take me wrong, we've employed some before that have come across, look great on paper, interviewed well, but actually we found that they're not the right person. And there's a couple of sayings, rather have a hole than a what's it. But I think sometimes creating a hole is better than just sticking with the wrong person. What I am really proud of is in a state agency, the churn of staff is high. And I've had years, probably the previous 2 years to this, probably, 20 up to 21, 22, where we had a lot of staff kind of coming in, getting up to a certain level, being poached because they work for Nicol Co. They're a valued commodity and the grass was greener. Actually now our churn rate or our kind of loss of staff is only about 8% last year. It's normally about 25, 30% in our industry. So touch wood, I'm hoping that we can kind of maintain it around those levels, because I do invest a lot of my effort and energy into staff members, and I am gutted when someone leaves the business, unless it's the right thing for them and for us. I am genuinely gutted when I feel like someone who's given me a lot of their time goes on to something that may not even be better for them. It's an opportunity that looks better. It's hard to deal with those moments.
Good. Well, you mentioned it very, very briefly. You mentioned rugby, but obviously, that was a key passion for you. What do you think how's rugby helped you in running Nicol Co?
Well, as a youngster, I was minis and juniors club captain. So at the age of 14, I was kind of representing all the younger age groups at the club that I was at. I was team captain, and I'd moved from Staffordshire to Droitwich around that time. I was the new kid. It probably allowed me to make friends quite quickly. But I think having that kind of captaincy experience or attitude on the pitch, I'm willing to go and put myself on the line to make sure my scrum half doesn't get a shoe in. It probably goes down quite well. I am passionate. I record a tit for my staff every morning. They know I get up early. I'm just a worker. And I do graft. I'm now a coach. My son's 13. He's in the under 13s at the club that I used to play at. So I've taken the role as team manager. So I'm organising or helping to organise tours, but I'm organising fixtures on the weekend and all those bits and pieces. And I'm kind of playing around with the teams and moving people onto the pitch and stuff like that. But I've got a really wide range of players' abilities, 37 players in total. So I've got to make sure that, no names, Timmy, gets as much game time as the Galacticos that are on the pitch. And I think that probably does come into business a little bit. I'm just, if I enjoy it, I get passionate about it, and I'll give it my all. And
I really sense that coming through. What do you love most about what you do?
Right now, I think it's kind of seeing the projects through and doing it better than most. For our business, we are literally making a difference for people. Our vision's memorable for the right reasons. So that kind of really does sum up what we're about. I love it that pretty much every single day I get someone message me something property related. Have you got a financial advisor I could speak to? Can your team come and value my property? And that's because they see me as their person for property. And I want all of my staff to get to that position. Some of them are 2 years into their 20-year journey or whatever, but I want my team to all be that person that if there's a property related thing, whether it's advice or need assistance or would you do this, whatever the question might be, I want us to be the people to go to. Work's easier for me now, Kevin. I feel like I've done my main graft. I'm now kind of sharing what I've gone through with others and bringing them up. And that's why I think that freedom of time is now becoming more important to me. I've just turned 40. I've been an estate agent for half of my life. Yeah. I want to do now things that kind of really have a positive impact in my local patch. And it is my hometown now. And my business is here as well. So there's two positives there. It's going to raise house prices when I get these health corridors in place and we get the brine baths back and all those bits and pieces. But also it's seen good for a businessman in the town to actually be given a bit more work into the town as well. So
yeah, very good. So you've clearly got a lot right in your journey. Can you pinpoint a couple of things that maybe you do differently with a bit of a do-over?
Yeah, I wouldn't want it to come across negatively, but I probably put too much faith in my senior leadership team and distanced myself at the wrong time. I think I've learned from, I wouldn't say exit interviews, but feedback from staff that have left before, that the message that I portray wasn't necessarily getting through, and communication was probably different to how I would have liked to have been, and I may have lost over my time some staff as a result of that. So probably, and it is a learning curve, and nothing has stopped us from being a strong business or anything like that, but it's probably different than it would have been had I not have spent a bit more time myself with people. At the end of the day, you don't want to micromanage people that you employ to do the job for you, but similarly, I probably should have listened a bit more. I wrote down two things that I'm going to ask my team. What's the single best idea to improve our company? That's something I'm going to go to our team on. And then I think this is American, so I wouldn't necessarily frame it this way. But the second thing was, what's the stupidest thing we are doing?
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm open to that feedback. It can be anonymous if they want it to be, but I think my staff would be fairly open to kind of come and say it to my face if they had to.
Yeah.
But I think as a business, we're still not perfect. I'm sure there's things that frustrate my staff. They do it because they want to, keep everyone happy. But actually, they probably got a better way of doing it. And I just want to be open to that now. So the big challenge for me is, can I bring someone through to become a managing director of the business so that I can be free and do what I need to do? I don't see myself as a CEO as a title, but a chairman, still having a lot of involvement, still making sure that I am engaged with what the business is doing, but actually have someone who can be the North Star for them, the person they can go to with all their questions. And I think realistically, that is probably going to be my challenge probably for the next 2 years, that I want to, from within the business, build up another level, really.
Yep.
I say that now. Maybe in 2 years' time, you interview me and go, "So how is it, Matt?" And I'm still chugging away. But
yeah. Well, what is the long-term plan? What's the legacy you want to leave? And you mentioned your blueprint to get you to over the next few years. But what is your North Star and your goal?
The blueprint then, and still we discuss, is that we want to have a £5 million turnover business by the end of 2030.
Right.
If I'm honest, I'd say within the last year or so, and I don't know if it's midlife crisis or what, but I'm more in favour of my son and daughter. My daughter's very talented dance-wise and bits and pieces. I can't see my son wanting to become an estate agent. You never know, but it doesn't fill me with much hope that he wants to be one. So I'm thinking employee ownership trust. Okay. I'd like the staff to have ownership of the business. I think they'd struggle to find a better brand around to have ownership of. I wouldn't want to sell it off to some capital fund or anything like that, because I wouldn't want to see the name changed and everything that we've worked for to be changed. So I would probably like to just make sure that the business runs in a way that I've worked hard to kind of build up, still delivering with the vision and the values that we'd set out. But actually, the team that I have, I'd love to see them owning a big share of it. And for me to be there as a supporting role then, freeing myself up to do more in my community. I'd love to do, we've got a financial roadshow that we want to do around schools. We want to start talking to the kind of the first schools and kind of middle schools about not financial advice per se, but just the stuff you don't get taught, about what renting is, how you own a property, how a savings account works and all those bits and pieces. There's loads of stuff I could fill my time with. And I'd like to still have the passive income from my business, of course, but and also my involvement there. But really, I think that's my next bit. I take a lot of kind of great hope from seeing that KFC guy set it up when he was 45, and all these people they weren't 21 setting up these businesses, like Ben from Gymshark. They weren't young people doing it. They've got to a certain point in their life, and then there's still more to come, and that's where I kind of feel I still get excited about a lot of things. I want to get involved in different things as well, different projects.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you, Matt, and so really understanding a little bit more about your business and your approach to business. So thank you very much for that. Are you up for a couple of quick fire questions before we close?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Great. So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Cut yourself some slack. The late nights worrying about things don't solve it. Sometimes you just need to go to bed and think about it the next day. I'd say that's probably one of the things, and probably be better in school. It's not affected me. I've got 7 C's, 3 B's and a D, and I'm running a good business with a lot of staff. But I wish I probably started learning a little bit earlier. Some of the books I've read now, I could have read when I was younger, and I would have been well set up for the rest of my life. But I'm not going to give myself a hard time over it.
No. Okay. Well, tell us about the books then. So what learning resources would you point other entrepreneurs in the direction of?
So at my point in the business, I would say a good book would be Who Not How. And that's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And that is about, you've got to employ the right people to do the job best, because I could procrastinate and bottleneck and stop things from happening. Whereas as an estate agency, to employ a marketing manager, our marketing's gone to a different level. The engagement that we get now, and that's because there is someone who's solely focused on it, and she's excellent and she's got a good team. But Who Not How is one of them. Start With Why, Simon Sinek. Yeah, that's another good one. Happy Sexy Millionaire, just recently I've read with Stephen Bartlett. By Stephen Bartlett. It's not about being a happy, sexy millionaire. I'm not trying to be at 40 years old, but and nor is he claiming to be either. But it's got some very strong life lessons in there. Right. I'm not a book reader. I feel like I have to make use of my time. So if I'm traveling, I have Audible, and I love it. And I've got a challenge this year to make sure I listen to 24 different books throughout the year. So I'm on a journey at the moment. Some of them I've started and had to write off. There's sometimes that sunk cost. If you're not into it and you see it's still got 7 hours left and you start distracting yourself listening to podcasts, you're better off just cancelling it and going to the next one. But obviously I'm going to start listening to ScaleUp Radio as well on my podcasts. Make sure I'm learning from them. But yeah, books. Then there's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's a few other great ones out there. But I think at the moment, Traction from Gino Wickman has been a game changer for me in the last 5 years. Who Not How more recently has really helped me to kind of see where I want to be, and that's exciting for me, but it'll also be exciting for the staff as well. Yeah,
fantastic, good. And any apps or bits of software that you find particularly useful?
Yeah, definitely. Loom is one that I use regularly. So I record a tip for my staff every single morning. I then send it on time delay. It gets sent to them at 8 a.m. and they watch it in their morning meeting at 8:30. And Loom actually yesterday came through saying it saved me some like 40 meetings in the last month already. So Loom's a brilliant bit of tech. It's just a screen recording more than anything. It's like a Zoom call really, but pre-recorded. I do use ChatGPT, and I found great use for that. So when I was talking about me checking our Google reviews to kind of see what our strengths are really as a business, what people are saying, I copied and pasted probably about 20 for each office. And I said, can you dissect from this what people feel about our company? And then it broke it down into 8 different sections, and it really kind of cemented some of the key points without me having to try and work it out myself. Yeah. I think those are probably my 2 main apps.
Good, excellent. You've mentioned a couple of people already. Who would you say has had the most influence on you as a business leader?
I've been asked this question before and I've struggled. I wouldn't say from a business leadership point of view. I think my father's played a good part in my life from a work ethic point of view. I saw he worked very hard when I was kind of growing up and I was still at school, and I've probably taken a lot from that. Right now, I take a lot from abroad. I actually have an American real estate coach. So I've got a lady called Sandra who works with me, and weekly we have check-ins. But I'm also part of the Tom Ferry coaching group. So Tom Ferry's an American real estate coach. I'm going over there at the end of this month. I went over there last year as well. And the reason I'm going over to America instead of doing it in England is because I've done the journey in England. I feel like I've kind of got to where I know most things, but I want to be challenged. I want to see what the new directions are. And hopefully that's a good sign to my staff that I'm still investing in myself and my time to ensure that I'm improving. I think Tom, very ex-estate agent, but he's very good in terms of his leadership. I don't know, Martin Johnson, Clive Woodward. I like Clive Woodward's approach to teamship. We wrote our staff handbook based on teamship. So we asked our staff what our rules should be, as opposed to us dictating from the top. And there's a bit more ownership from them by them selecting them. And obviously you can then not bash them over the head with them, but you can repeat back to them, this is what you said, you thought the business should look like. So Clive Woodward, obviously a rugby relationship there as well. Something great.
If you had the opportunity to ask Clive Woodward one question, what might it be, do you think?
What would he put it down to that got the best performance out of his players? Okay. What was it that he did probably different to others that got it out of the players? I mean, I think for me with my lot, answer my own question. I think me with my lot, I being visible is important, but I think going into the office and also getting amongst it. I'm not answering the phones for them, but I could still do the deals but being a bit of a bounce of energy when I get in there. And people have commented that is something that I bring. I might not be there regularly enough, but when I'm there, the lift of mood is visible. And that's exciting. You know, I've got to keep that. That's the enjoyment of the job for me, making sure that I can kind of go and add a bit of value. And I don't want to be that director that walks in, everyone goes, he's here. I want people to kind of feel a bit lifted when they see me come through the room. And Clive Woodward, that might have been his tactic. I don't know. It might be that he led from the front. I'm not sure. He probably never put Martin Johnson on his backside, but he certainly had a great way with the team. And I think teamship, having heard him speak once at an event, I think it was an estate agency event, I took away from that was, for me, probably one of the single best things I could bring into my business. And, you know, for me to turn around to ask my staff, what's the single best idea to improve our company now? Yeah. I'm not saying I know everything anymore. I'm kind of saying, tell me, help me. Yeah. I need the answers.
Brilliant. Good. And from a marketing point of view, what's your most successful marketing tactic, would you say?
It's being consistent with a lot of things, but probably our best thing is we do a market update. So written by myself and my father, we've done it for the last 5 years, 6 years. And even today, I was in an appointment and the lady said, when she said, oh, what are you doing this afternoon? I said, I'm filming a podcast. And she said, what will it be about? And I said, well, I'm an estate agent. And she went, oh, Nicol Co, I get it. And she went, oh, I always read your market update. And that's the thing for us. It's a very subtle piece. It's a 2-pager. We deliver it to 26,000 homes every single month. We have done for the last 6 years. So there's my consistency. We produce it online. We also record it as a video, but it's not about us. It's about the market in Droitwich, Worcester and Malvern. It's national market. It's the economy. It's rental market. It's telling people what they want to know, which is what's going on with the house prices in their area, because everyone will read that. And I'm not trying to say, and use Nicol Co if you're thinking of selling. I never ask for business. All I'm doing is just answering what the market's doing, as opposed to someone reading it in a tabloid that have their own agenda. I'm just giving them an honest, house prices are down by this much this month. However, we are comparing it to a year ago when the end of the stamp duty incentive was in and the market was flying. So just giving them a real kind of honest approach on how things are. And that's the best bit of marketing for me. It's not revolutionary. It's honest advice, and people see it as a genuine, helpful piece of literature.
Super. Brilliant. It's been absolutely fantastic talking with you, Matt. If people would like to get hold of you or find out more about Nicol Co, what's the best way for them to do that, Matt?
It's funny. There's a lot of methods, aren't there? I think the probably best way would be via LinkedIn. I'm not sure if I've got it restricted for people to not be able to contact me, but I'll loosen it up so people can. So Matt Nicol, Matt with 2 T's. Nicol is Nicol. Or on my Instagram, if you're that way inclined, it's Matt_the_agent. And yeah, hopefully we can connect and have some conversations offline. I do enjoy helping other businesses as well. I've done some mentorship in a estate agency, but if anyone does have any questions and they want to reach out to me, then I would definitely be happy to assist.
Fantastic. Matt Nicol, thank you very much indeed for being my guest on ScaleUp Radio today.
Thank you, Kevin.
I hope you enjoyed that. discussion. And if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.